Yo, how you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 165 of the Simpa Life podcast. Hope you are keeping well. Hope you had a wonderful week. Yeah, early British summertime, apparently, because the clocks have changed, and so I nearly missed today's guest, but we got it together there in a country whose clocks just changed yesterday, so neither of us have an idea what fucking time it is. So thank you for making the time to come and join us today. A couple of bits of housekeeping from sort of last week. We're still moving forward with the hemp garden project. I've got a few more meetings coming up over the next 2 weeks with council and various other individuals. I'm going to try to endeavor to keep you all informed as possible. Certain things I can't say right now because it could potentially jeopardize our negotiations. But as soon as we can, we will be making an announcement about our proposals for both sites for the Hemp Garden Park and for the CIC Cafe. Um, yeah, let's jump straight into today's guest then, who is a freelance journalist who covers health, drugs, and subculture. The author of Should All Drugs Be Legalized? I know I can hear you. We're going to have a conversation about legalization. It's coming, it's coming. And his new book, The Pocket Book of Psychedelics. They were the 2024 Ferris-UC Berkeley Fellow in Psychedelic Journalism. We will find out what that is as well. They are, oh my God, my brain's instantly forgot how to pronounce it. Ah! No, sorry, brother, you're gonna have to help me here. M
It's Mather
Mather,
Busby.
Mather, Mather,
Cheers.
Mather Busby. Sorry, brother.
I appreciate it. Sometimes people just kind of dive in with their own like stab at it, and it's a lot more rough than what just happened here.
Sweet. I appreciate the what's the word? The compensation for my inability to pronounce it. I was just so in the flow with it, and we'd obviously just had the conversation about how to pronounce it, and I instantly went to pronounce it the wrong way. And I'm not going to say it because if I do, I'm going to confuse myself again. Mather.
Yeah, it's interesting when like the human mind has to kind of reckon with a totally new word or a new sort of syllable. It reveals something about the machinery of the mind.
100%, 100%. And it's humbling when you tell yourself to do something and you watch yourself not do it and you're like, but I told you. And your brain's like, yeah, but I'm trying. And you just keep going, like keep going, keep going. It is that action that I suppose the older you get, the more novel it kind of feels because you think as a kid you learn, whereas a child, like every day is just a humbling, you trip over, you learn, you find something new. And then as an adult, you live this massive period of like, I know everything. And then there, I have a moment going, I can't pronounce your name.
I mean, there's so much information these days. Probably, when I was a kid, I wasn't sort of inputting as much information every day, even though I was at school and then university. But, with the whole Instagram and the phones just being so much
Mm.
quicker than ever before, our minds are sponges, and that we're probably putting in too much stuff for them to really hold, or mo most people.
Yeah, and it's which is will relate further on to our conversation about conscious drug use. It's I believe it's conscious media consumption. If you scroll, you thinking, no, I'm only looking at the videos I'm looking at. You're not. The frame rate your eyes and your brain processes at is phenomenal. You're taking in glimpses of this, bits of that, words of this, associated of this, and that's building a whole thing. So you can spend 2 hours scrolling and be like, oh, I actually only watched like five, six videos that I liked. But you've absorbed, like you said, hundreds of different perspectives, opinions, echoes,
Hmm.
facts, and whatever else from everywhere. And it's become almost conflicting and contradictory because the algorithms almost create an individual reality for all of us. Whereas when we were at school, it was like, here's the one textbook you all allowed, here's the one fact that happened and the one opinion from that thing. And we all got that kind of standardization. And then the smartphones blew it all up. We're all like, but I learned different to you.
Yeah,
Yes.
indeed. I mean, the flip side though is this democratization of information
Mhm.
and with school and the curriculum and to some extent the state having a monopoly on what people learn. I think that's been kind of blown wide open, and there's some great things there.
Mm. I think, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because the main thing that I want to see through a national curriculum is the standardization to us to the base for all kids, that everybody gets lifted up to there. Then above that, yeah, you can add your extras and your garnish and whatnot, but everybody needs that base nutrition of education. And so I think over time, as we're seeing like this whole thing with academies and various other things, that the concept of what is education, because I remember as a kid being told, you're not always gonna have a calculator in your pocket. I'm like, yeah, I have one in my pocket. I have one on my watch. Soon we're gonna have one in your head with a chip. Like, why do we keep needing to learn calculus? Like we could be filling that with social media literacy lessons. You could be filling that with how to identify scams online, how to differentiate between AI and authentic materials, and like those are things I think we
Well,
need an
yeah.
education on.
Or the difference between indica and sativa. That would have saved me a lot of trouble.
Yeah, we like you said, just the that's one of the things that I really appreciate the internet for is the not the standardization, but the opening and the what am I trying to say here? The accessibility of drug information. There's obviously still a lot of shite coming through your central government sources and whatever else, and you talk to Franks, etc. But through things like Erdogan and various other resources, people can put in trip reports and things like that, and you can build this correlated data sets that give you sort of a better informed, better information about sort of the experience you're potentially considering.
For sure, for sure. I mean, the other day I got some opium tea here, which I'd never tried, and I did Google it to try and like figure out any sort of, harm reduction information or dosing advice, but it was all government information.
Mm.
Like the first two pages of Google were totally locked down, and actually the Reddit threads weren't very enlightening. So I just ended up going with the advice of the person that sold me it. At this very legitimate tea stand, actually, like
Mm.
on, in the kind of main bazaar. And, it's a very mild feeling. But yeah, it did strike me like, wow, like there's literally, it's only sort of like regulated information here and like very kind of anti-opium research, that's
Mm.
coming up.
Yeah, it's so for guests that don't know, Martha's in Martha is in Morocco.
Mather.
Mather, fucking hell. I'm sorry, man.
That's all right.
Mather. Fucking hell, brain. Come on. Is in Morocco, is what I was trying to say, just to give people an idea there. Although I think opium tea in the UK is in a weird grey area as well, because
Oh,
obviously
really?
poppies are not
Because it would
unlawful
just
to
grow.
grow
It
in the
would just
UK.
It would just grow, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think.
Probably it's illegal to prepare them, or which is just bizarre, isn't it? I mean, this is the whole thing that kind
Mm,
of got Michael Pollan interested in drug policy, I believe, and which eventually led him to write the How to Change Your Mind book, because
yeah.
I think some poppies maybe grew in his garden or were growing in a friend's garden, and it just struck him as, crazy that something that is literally like native, or at least grows naturally, is, so prohibited. So he kind of drank some opium tea and wrote about it for Harper's Magazine, I believe. So yeah, I'm only following in his footsteps.
Yeah, yeah. I did quite enjoy his book. I think there was some points that he kind of to missed. I mean, we'll get onto the whole misnomer, as it were, of legalization. But I think the conceptual idea and the kind of parallels that he drew within it was good journalism, and I think it did impact a lot of air quotes normies, and did kind
Hmm.
of keep a conversation in the mainstream for quite a while. And yeah, it is. It's an oddity in that there are numerous places around the world that cannabis is as native as nettles are to the north of
Yeah.
here. You know what I mean? And just left unchecked, it just grows and grows and grows. And it's a diatomaceous plant. It's self-selected sexes. It can hermaphrodite on its own will. So the plant can literally just be like, oh, doof, seeds fall into the ground and it can stay in the ground for like 20 years. It's one of the big things of like the I think still the DE is the largest amount of plants or the largest proportion percentage of plants that they destroy domestically are wild. And
Mm.
they keep doing this thing of like, oh, somebody's cultivated this and rah, rah, rah. And they go and they'll like burn the grounds down, and then you create the carbon sink. So you put this lovely layer of carbon on top of it, and the seeds sit there and just wait for the right environment at any point over decades, and then boom, all the weed grows again. They come back and go, who the hell has grown all this weed? Do you know what I mean? It is like I said, it's weird that plants that'll grow as a weed in one place, and then when grown in a different place with that intention, it's the intention again is what speaks to it. It's the plants are not illegal. They can't be. They have no lawful responsibility. You can't put a handcuff on a weed
Mm.
plant, drag it in court, and find it guilty. It's humans' actions. So it's like I said, it's the charge of cultivation and the charges of production. So cultivation, as the Feed Our Birds campaign proved here in the UK, under law is intentional. It's the act of a human deliberately sowing a seed with the intention of getting this illicit plant from it, with the intention of then from that plant, when it produces this drug, using that drug. So it's
Hmm.
unlawful based on that you might get the drug at the end of it. It's not even that you've broken the law by the thing. Yet you then throw cannabis seed out to feed the birds. Some of those seeds might just sow in the ground.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
almost like a war on nature, really, isn't it? And yeah, the power of nature is a very mysterious, nebulous thing. I was at a coca conference in Peru in February, and there was some indigenous experts on coca there, and they were really kind of couching a lot of what they were saying in terms of the spirit of the coca leaf.
mm,
And yeah, I thought that was really interesting, like the idea that the plant itself has a kind of consciousness and is kind of to some extent, perhaps, choosing where to grow, or even possibly it's a lot more of a far out idea, like directing certain events, or has like a kind of dualistic kind of nature. Like
mm,
on one side it can be good, and on one side it can turn into cocaine and create kind of addiction. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of get into that sort of stuff with cannabis as well, right? Like I remember in India just growing everywhere, like all along the sides of the roads. And yeah, people there have a very different relationship to it than in sort of like kind of urban centers.
mm. Yeah, yeah, it's I feel it's the kind of what is the word, the Native American word, wetico, which describes like the kind of the greed, a sickness that infected the European settlers in
Mm,
America. And when they landed and they saw this bounty, this Garden of Eden, and they went, needs boundaries, needs a fence, needs this, that's
yeah.
mine, that's mine, I'll fight for that. And it just, and the way we commodified nature over time, we've then, through global colonization, effectively, we've made that an international practice, and it's coming now square butting up modern capitalist Western neoliberal practices against traditional practices and cultures where all of these fucking drugs came from. Like that's the thing of it. It's like even the stuff we know of like now aspirin and is it the acacia tree? Like that was an indigenous practice. You know, we look at the thing that South America and ayahuasca, and it's just the only answer we ever get from any of the tribes is the plants told us. It's like so all of the tens of thousands of plants, y'all fucking just went this plus this. How the fuck? Do you know what I mean? So, like you said, it's the plants almost speak to them, and
Yeah.
and I think of there's a jaguar. I can't remember what hallucinogenic sort of like psychedelic substance it eats, but it eats it ahead of hunts because and they theorize that it
Mm,
allows it to make certain colors more vibrant and motions, and
yeah. The old
it
visual acuity.
yeah, 100% just tunes it right in. And so I think we'll have observed other animals eating things like deer, rabbits, all sorts. Basically, most mammals, my fucking cats, love to eat cannabis plants. Like they just love to
Do
chew on
they?
the leaves. They love to just give a go of it. Um,
The reindeers, apparently they, if they see some Amanita muscaria mushrooms, they will eat them until there's none left, basically. And
mhm,
but then it's interesting how like drug cultures might form around animal behavior, because then like the Siberians back in the day would then drink the pee
mhm.
of the animals, right? And actually that was easier on their stomachs than, especially for the older chaps, than kind of eating the mushrooms themselves.
Mm. Well, yeah, and that's in the worst kind of way. That exact behavior is kind of replicated into humans drinking human piss, because like meth and certain other drugs transfer through from piss. Not even joking is the thing. Like the body doesn't process it; it just works it out through waste. And if you were to then
Yeah.
consume said product, um,
I
y-
remember I was at a peyote ceremony, and I asked the chap next to me for a bit of his water, because I think I must have drunk mine, and he just sort of passes me his flask with this kind of mischievous grin. And I'm like, hmm. And then I like, pick up the flask and I look down, and it's like kind of slightly warm, like slightly steaming. And I'm just like, what's that, mate? And he's like, he's sort of saying, like, especially after the Marikame, the shaman had given the blessings, he was kind of suggesting, that it would just be, ridiculous not to kind of have another go on his medicine that was now in his urine.
Mm,
Yeah, interesting take. Like I certainly didn't drink any of his or my own urine during that ceremony or after, but I see the logic, right? Like the fecal matter is obviously like the waste, but there's an argument to be had about the urine still having this sort of excess stuff. Like the body can only ingest X amount of Y vitamin in a session or in a couple of hours. So there's a big industry for this actually in India. Like there's sort of like these urine therapy clinics, and they give people advice.
Wow. Yeah, it's there's been obviously uh a bit more sort of what do they call them, like gonzo journalists, sort of along yourself, sort of lines of people that have dove into these communities, people that swear by it, and it's like it's the ultimate health trend, or they'll then put it on the skin and whatever else. And there's certain in abstract, the science in some of it kind of can make sense in theory, but I can't get
Hmm.
my head around. Maybe it was the way I was toilet trained as a child or whatever, but that goes away. But I think there is something we have to consider as a species is the impact our drug use is having on nature. Like cocaine, ketamine, Viagra, antidepressants, female birth control, all in the waterways. Like there should be some sort of system. In an ideal, if we're like 200 years in the future living on a space station and there can't be waste, we all piss into something. It then goes through and extrapolates and somehow ferments off the vitamins and the electrolytes and the different drug compounds and it recycles it. Like and not the same way that we need that to recover these things, but we need a strategy, frankly, because we're modulating the effects of animals. Like the some fish, they're observing what do you call it? Depleting sizes of their schools, their board. What am I trying to say?
Yikes.
The brood, the size of the what do fish have?
Gills?
No, not like flocks, like
Oh,
the
fins?
collective. No, the
Oh, what's
collective.
this? Flock? Yeah, a flock. Herd?
People will know what we're trying to get to here anyway, but that is depleting, and they're theorizing that that is due to these hormonal suppressant drugs that are used for reproduction and sex reproduction, yeah, in humans. And then when you look at like sort
Oh,
of
wow.
cocaine and shit like that, there's an index that measures. And one of the ways we discover how much of cocaine is consumed in a major city, I think London and Barcelona and Berlin have been going back and forth for a good bit on cocaine use. But that's how they're then measuring it is parts per million effectively in waterways. Um, but it's those, we were talking about like conscious drug use earlier, I think just before we started recording. That's one of the ways in which we're not conscious of drug consumption. And it's like I said, it's not just the illicit drugs that are the problem there. Those antidepressants, how many people are taking them? Antipsychotic medications, anti XYZ, and those compounds building up, like I said, in waterways. Then the creatures that are then eating those animals and then up and through the food chain, and then we eat the animal. And we just, I mean, when I'm a vegan, but people that eat meat, like there's loads of fucking meat is injected with antibiotics, is injected with XYZ, and it's just another way by which we're breaking the chain. You know, we've evolved in this what do they call it, the wheel of life. And we've suddenly gone, no, we're better than this, and we're trying to live outside of it, and everything around us is collapsing.
Yes, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? Like everyone should kind of have the right to, take whatever drug that they wish to use. But obviously, it's complicated with the laws, creating illegal markets, and then obviously, yeah, our kind of municipal sewer systems that then have to deal with our waste. I mean, they're considering in LA now, I believe, like forcing, like to some extent, forcing people into treatment. But
Mm.
yeah, I wonder if like in the rest of the world, if we could just be like, if people are taking too much drugs, you could be like, all right, you have to drink your urine then, and until all the drugs in the system is gone. But I mean that would be dangerous. It's only
Yeah.
a
That
frivolous
that
point.
yeah, that's the modern day version of oh, you like cigarettes, do you? You catch a kid with smoke the whole
Yeah,
damn pack.
20
Yeah,
and one, tie him up with an elastic band and his mouth like.
yeah. But again, it's that then moralizing of the behavior. I find it really difficult to moralize about any behavior unless it is in the George Carlin. He did a set years ago, many years ago, because obviously he's been dead for a long time now at this point, about the Ten Commandments, and he boiled it down to one: violence. Do not commit violence. Violence is theft.
Yeah.
Violence is assault. Violence is sexual. Like Those are the things that I will moralize over. When it comes to then, oh, this human stole this or did X, Y, Z, my brain instantly goes, yeah, but why? And so you talk about LA forcing into treatments. One of the things that terrifies me, and I reported to Big Brother Watch and a few other different associations in the UK and haven't heard back from anybody, unfortunately. Durham Police, my local fucking police force, are now going to be forcing people into treatment for Class A's. So if
Oh
you
wow.
are caught as a drug dealer, a shoplifter, or a burglar, you will be forcibly tested for Class A's. If you refuse to test, you'll be charged under the same offence you would be given if you refuse a swab for driving.
Jeez. It's
So
pretty draconian. It's pretty draconian.
massively. And then if you're found to be in like on these substances, you will then be forced into treatment. If you don't take the treatment, you will then be further criminalized.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, like Durham has gone massively backward from what we were at one point under like Ron Hogg and Mike Barton. We were considered like this liberal place, and we were like the Bristol of the North in a lot of ways for our drug policy.
Mm.
And
Yeah, because
underneath,
some of these like diversion schemes, it is like technically decriminalization, like de facto, but it's not really taking the sort of administration of that away from the police. It's not really, so it's not actually decrim because the police are still sort of the arbiters of
Mhm.
whether, what happens. So, like my understanding of some of them, I visited one in Berkshire, like right, like yeah, you kind of have to. If you're caught with the stuff, you have to go to this sort of like driving awareness meeting
Mm.
where you get asked, some serious questions, some potentially infantilizing questions. But then, yeah, if you don't sort of engage with the thing, then you might have to enter the criminal justice system, right? So I guess
Mm.
this is maybe similar in Durham, although I don't know exactly the
We,
details.
yeah, we created the diversion scheme. So the diversion scheme came out of Durham and was then adopted almost immediately by I think four or five other forces. And I think well, last time I checked, this is gonna be like 2 years out of date probably. There was 13 forces out of the 41 that had adopted these diversion schemes, and they were basically based on the back of a policy that Ron Hogg and Mike Barton came up with, which was deprioritization. Give me a list of all of the crimes and all the things that affect this area. Give me cannabis, put it in the fucking bomb. So then
Yeah.
it's literally just deal with anything else. So, but then if you got caught up with like we called it a tax on being a good neighbor for a while. So effectively, if you were growing less than 10 plants, if you were paying your electricity, paying your water, if you were being a good neighbor, not committing antisocial behavior or whatever, and you were being respectful, generally you were kind of left alone. Even if you were known about, you were generally kind of left alone. And this
Right.
caused a decentralization in cannabis production in Durham. So a lot of the big boys that were not like legacy decent people, these were guys that were setting up huge grow spots, stealing the electricity, using sort of coerced labor, etc.,
Wow.
or just importing from various other spots around sort of the country that use various other sort of techniques. Then people just
Yeah.
went, wait, I can grow a lot cheaper, get a lot more, and have a lot more variety if I can just do it at home. And knowing that basically they come through the door, it was what was it? It would be an 18 months suspended sentence for 2 years. So you get 18 months in prison, suspended for 2 years on first offence. So then it would just be they'd kind of put you on a list. We'll ignore you for 2 years and try not to trip over you again because we didn't mean to trip over you the first fucking time. And now it's like I said, it's completely changed, and they start attacking anybody and everybody that has anything to do with cultivation, and this has then led to big boys coming back in. I mean,
Oh wow.
the Treasury in the UK obviously has gone pretty hard against the Albanian nationals. Albania being a country of 2 point, this is, I don't know if you've ever covered Albania. It's something that somebody needs to really look into because it's an amazing thing of like 2.2, 2.3 million people, yet they run most of the drug trade in Europe. Like
Wow.
it is phenomenal because the government is so accepting of money. And what year are we in now? 25, 20 in 2023, the Albanian finance minister floated an idea of a €1 million amnesty. And he went, if anybody, Albanian national, that wants to come back to Albania and has up to €1 million, we don't know, tax free, just come bring it back. Like, how you got it? Pff, not on us. You want to bring that? You just come back. And there is obviously, we set up in, I think, July 2022, 23, might be the same year. Actually, it was the same year.
All right.
Justice minister in this country, justice minister in that country, we set up a thing where it was basically if you're an Albanian national caught for cannabis and drug related offences, he was supposed to be effectively deported immediately.
Yeah.
And so you'd serve your prison sentence in Albania. The allegations and the things that I'm hearing from people that either work directly with Albanian nationals or some of the guys that have become more nationalized over here and are like, now we're integrating it into British culture, but still
Mm.
doing the drug trade sort of thing. Is that basically you land over there and they're like, how did you get caught? What happened? Teach these boys, all right, fuck off, don't get caught again. They come back with the new skills and techniques, and over time, this get better and better. But that grouping is reducing over time. And so other entities are moving into these spaces. And because we've had
Mm.
such a postcode lottery of enforcement across the country, you've lost legacy growers, producers, and yes, if you want to call them drug dealers in various parts of the country that were decent people that grew quality product, that produced quality products, sold them at a fair price, weren't gangster mentality, weren't Scarfaced wannabes, weren't, trying to be this big bad I am. They were just literally, I like weed. Doing this gives me free weed. I love to see the people's faces when they say my weed is mint. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And we've kind
I
of
mean, the
lost
laws,
that.
yeah, the laws is, it just leads to more violence, right? Like,
Mhm.
and the Albanians kind of just like turned up 10, 15 years ago and suddenly kind of took over the cocaine trade. And yeah, the whole thing just lends itself to this whole, kind of system where, it's just criminal competition. And then
Mm.
maybe some other like, even badder motherfuckers are going to come in and replace the Albanians at some point and there might be bloodshed. And, one wonders like just how much simpler it would be if, people were just allowed to grow their 10 cannabis plants and cocaine was sold in kind of, regulated pharmacies, cheap, probably cheap, slightly cheap. I don't know. I mean, the prices are pretty cheap now, but certainly it would be like cleaner and
Mhm.
safer, for the people that are addicted as well, and they wouldn't have to be going around just sort of like scraping, pennies together to get a £5 like crack hit. So yeah, for them maybe it would be cheaper, but obviously maybe you don't want to make like the powder cocaine like ridiculously cheap
Mm.
because then that would like incentivize, you know, overconsumption. But I think we just have to accept, the cocaine is everywhere. It's in the pubs, it's in the football stadiums, it's on on the high streets, it's everywhere, and really, it's not going away. So the
Yeah.
economy does need a bit of a boost, and that's a lot of money. And right
Yeah.
now it's just going into criminal coffers, and then they're just sort of setting up barbershops, that have, don't even have barbers that really know how to cut hair. It's just they're just sort of like
Mhm.
hollow businesses, and it's a ridiculous situation.
Yeah, I think it's something like 750 new barbershops opened up across the country last year. Several of which you can see in pictures promoted by various rag top press in the UK, a couple on the street, you know what I mean? And so it used to be where it'd be like charity shop, betting shop, da da. It's now like barbers, nail salon, da 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 da. And obviously, the way the mainstream are covering is, oh, money laundering, money laundering. They're not asking where the money's coming from, or why that money then isn't, like you said, those industries don't exist. It's one of the things that's always bothered me, and it's part of the issue I've got with this capital L legalization movement, is that it's legalization minus decriminalization. So you're not decriminalizing the consumer, you're not decriminalizing and liberating the people you've oppressed. You're allowing a small group of people to profiteer and create a monopoly around the sale and production of these substances. And then where does that money
Totally.
go? It goes into the upper classes. It gets hidden in offshore things where your dealer Dave down the corner, you go buy a 20 bit off him, you go buy an eighth off him or whatever. He's going to use that money to feed his kids that night. He's going to use his money to put the electric on. It's direct, stays in the area. I want local weed for local people is the cause that I've been championing. Like the state of the prescription system in the UK is abominable. The fact that we are importing cannabis from Australia, from Canada, from Africa. You've got these, I call them the legalizationists, are flying around the world. I'm literally writing my latest article for Weed World is the legalizationists playbook. And it's basically, I'm going to go point by point what happened when they realized, shit, we can just go to an impoverished country. We can bribe, sorry, lobby their politicians. We can set up domestic industries to export. We can then become the sole exporters of this and control this. And you've got these guys, because I go to a lot of expos, I go to a lot of events, bragging, going, we've got it down to 30 cents a gram in Lathos. So, oh, in Colombia, we're at 15 cents a gram. And you look at the UK and they're selling at £8 a gram, £10 a gram, £16 a gram. And you're like, that's your drug dealers. It's the exact same thing, like you're saying. It's just the different. they, the legitimate drug dealers, the legalizationists, have access to tools and mechanisms. In fact, one more thing of it is Johan Hari in the Culture High documentary, and he's talking about you don't see the executives of Budweiser shooting each other. Like, because that's not
No,
the
indeed.
means in which they fight. They fight in the boardroom. They fight through advertising, through marketing. We don't have access to those tools. So the only way that the dealers can fight over market share, like you said, is violence. And as Neil Woods, the UK's most prolific undercover cop, described it, it's created an arms race. So then
Hmm.
the only thing is you take the less violent guy out, he gets replaced by a more violent guy. You then get more violent as the police, you can violently raid them or shoot them in the back or whatever. Then the next guy comes along and goes, okay, I need guns. Then the next guy, and it just builds and it's this arms race where
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
average consumer, like you said, is just like, if I could just have a little greenhouse out back, a couple of little plants, I don't only need, and you can, the economics of it, again, it bothers a lot of the people in the industry when I talk about this, but you can get your ounce down to £10 a gram, £10 an ounce.
Yeah.
Like that's what
I mean,
20, 20.
That's what's happened in Canada. It's the prices in Canada now are like crazy wholesale prices.
Mhm.
But yeah, you raise like a really like, important point. Like you've got these, big cannabis companies that have profited from some degree of grace and favor and connections, like GW Pharma. And then, you've got sort of poor chaps like Sean Fitzgerald, whose inquest starts today, 6 years after he was shot and killed, coming out of a cannabis farm in Coventry. He was unarmed, and we'll have to wait and see if there's going to be justice, and hopefully I'll be able to cover the case at some point. But yeah, I think that really does like shine a light on the continued brutality, really, of the war on drugs in the UK. That this chap literally, you know, you wonder if the police did actually sort of announce their presence because he kind of ran out, or if they just
Mm.
sort of came in all guns blazing without announcing, their presence, right? So he runs out the back door, and the sort of guy that they've got stationed out there just shoots him once in the chest, and he's dead. And his family have just been complaining at every sort of opportunity that they've had, really, just to say that they haven't been treated with any compassion during this whole process. And now that 6 years on, as I say, they've got to go for a 6-week inquest now in Coventry.
Yeah, I look forward to reading your coverage, and I agree. I do hope in some way justice is served. It's going to be difficult because we can't address the narrative problem, and that is that it's the same thing I've been arguing for a long time. Language is fucked. It's wonderful, and English is pretty damn good. We're pretty good. Of all the languages, we can get into nuance, but we still fall down on definitions of terms. And so you've got colloquial language, you've got legalese language, you've got formal diction, and they can all be different definitions of different terms. And this then allows you to construct different narratives. So that to the police, a drug is a drug is a drug. Cannabis is connected to terrorism. Ergo, the people that were blown up in that Manchester arena was because you smoking that joint right now. So me killing you saves those little girls. You get me? It's these things just they build and build, and they go into their little room as their little gang, as they are the police, and they're like, "Raw, raw, we're gonna smash these heads in raw." They can't. They've long since dehumanized the population that they seek to protect. Air quotes, biggest air quotes of protect, and the population know this, and we are just trying to survive the economic pressures. Like most sort of drug dealing is not done out of, I've got all of the career paths in front of me. I'm going to choose to deal these drugs. I'm going to choose to live in this space. Let me choose to want to access drugs. But if society was constructed in a different way, or there wasn't already this prejudice against them because of their class, their background, their schooling, their whatever, their literally skin color in a lot of cases, like the disproportionate way of policing on black gangs versus white gangs in the UK when it comes to cannabis production is insane. It's almost that, yeah, they're
Hmm.
assuming there to be weapons because they're black. There must be. Whereas then they go knock over a couple of council estate kids that may be producing 10 times more, but the way they approach that versus the way in Birmingham say it's policed. Like, do you know what I mean? Versus the North. Like, there's this postcode lottery, like saying it creates this warped perception in people's minds, and then people just can justify it. They can't deal with the contradictions in their brain, so they just go, well, drugs are bad, and drugs lead to X, Y, Z. So if them doing this, that's the lesser of two evils. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you wonder what does happen in these sorts of meetings, right? I mean, I would say that I do feel slightly conflicted about like cocaine use.
Mm,
I don't, personally use it myself. I mean, it's not really ever been my cup of tea that much, but I guess just the path of kind of destruction from South America to the, wherever it's going in the UK just seems so clear.
hmm.
Everything in Mexico and Colombia and all of that. So obviously it's the fault of the law that there is this kind of violence associated with it for the most part. But yeah, I think people who use cocaine, I mean, it's difficult if you're addicted. I don't want to just like throw shade on people that are in really sticky situations, but yeah, you do wonder like if everyone did kind of just stop taking cocaine, what if that would affect kind of, I mean, it's sort of over now in Mexico to some extent, but a lot of what happened there was driven by demand for cocaine.
Hmm.
But then you're just like, well, then maybe then the impetus for the governments to actually reform the laws would then go away if no one was taking it. So it kind of goes both ways. And yeah, another
Yeah.
thing to keep your eye on is this World Health Organization review of the legal status of the coca leaf, which is going
Mm.
to report in September or October. So that could be really interesting if they do recommend a down scheduling or even a complete descheduling. That could be like the beginning of, change to cocaine.
Yeah, I think it's the issue is going to be anything they try and do to give us, oh, here's the light little version of this. All right, I'm going to buy 50 of those and make it into one of the thing I actually wanted. Like, there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
the
the ketamine nasal spray that they're selling.
esketamine. Yeah,
Yeah.
fucking hell. Yeah, and there's Numbrino. Have you seen Numbrino?
What's that?
It's the cocaine nasal spray.
Oh wow.
Is that Johnson Johnson or do they make the esketamine one? I always confuse which company it is. But yeah, it's Numbrino because it's fucking
Mm.
hilarious. It's like just Numbrino. Do you see with the
Numbrino.
yeah, it's the esketamine one is literally it's just like oh you're sketty because that's a cultural word as well of like if you take ketamine you oh you're sketty. Like it
Sketty, they say up north. I would just say ketty.
wait, but like ketty, but it's like because the I think the comes from being like spaghetti of just like loose and just when they go completely
Yeah, yeah,
floppy
yeah.
as it were. But yeah, it's oh my brain wants to go on like three different points here. Uh, let's jump back. We'll go on the cocaine one. So yeah, it's interesting. Did you see? Was it Bolivia 2, 3 years ago? God, I hate the start of the year. It always messes up my reference of when saying when things happened. A few years ago, they released a report, and they basically just went, "How much cocaine is produced? How much money do we spend destroying that cocaine? Market rate in country, how much would it cost to buy that cocaine?" And it
Mm.
turns out it's hundreds of millions of dollars cheaper if they just bought the cocaine. They went to the cartels and went, "Oh, you know all that cocaine is your money, lads."
Yeah,
Like
well, it
it's
cuts out all the middlemen, and that's where a lot of the violence
Mhm.
kind of comes from. These guys just sort of scrapping over the crumbs on in between the transit points and to get sort of new routes. And I mean
Yeah.
the UK government even commissioned a report that was published recently by the Home Office that yeah very clearly acknowledged that drug policing enforcement doesn't actually lead to decreased violence. It actually increases the violence. So they kind of admitted it,
Mm.
for themselves that when there is that kind of market disruption, then it just leads to this vacuum that just increases, the likelihood of people, fighting it out, like you were saying before.
Yeah, I think cocaine also struggles with something that most of the drugs don't, in that to a lot of people, it is by its nature a polydrug. They're using it with alcohol, and so degrades into, not degrades, chemically transforms in the brain into coca ethanol.
Yeah,
Coke,
it's like
coke,
and
coke,
then you can get addicted to that,
yeah,
right?
that
Like it's a
coca,
whole separate,
yeah,
addiction.
and it's so. Like Coke will make you talk in the old parlance cod shit. You're in 4 o'clock in the morning in somebody's kitchen, just like, oh mate, that third Harry Potter movie though, that table, right? That table was made by a guy, and this guy he used to live in 2 doors down from us. Yeah, man, honestly, like you know what I mean? Just talking absolute shit. Um, but you kind of know it, and people are in it, and it's a space, and you're just kind of just feeding off each other's neurohormones, and you're waiting to deplete down, something to come up, and the day to be done, kind of thing. But there's something in coca ethanol in that you're getting drunk, and then you're adding this stimulant on top. And people say, "Oh no, I sniff coke to keep myself sober." It's like, then why are you fucking drinking? All you're doing is depressing your heart, then adding a stimulant to it. You've also then got the uninhibited actions of like when you drink alcohol, you're like, then you put the big I am on top of it as well. And that mixture, like I said, just it the probability of getting into a negative, potentially antisocial outcome is massive because it's not just then you out in that environment. We've put thousands of them corralled in city centers together, and then we hit a buzzer and they all leave and go into the same space to get limited access to food, limited access to taxis, limited access to sexual partners, etc. And they're all just and we wonder why it's so animalistic. Do you know what I mean? It's like we need to update the infrastructure. The death of the third spaces in this country is insane. The number of nightclubs gone, the number of pubs gone, the number of like restaurants, hospitality spaces, public spaces, green spaces, parks, etc. gone. You're not allowed to. We're basically becoming America. When I went around America and I discovered what loitering really is, loitering is the law of being in a public place and not spending fucking money. That's all it
Yeah.
is. Literally, just you're outside, give me your money. You paid for your house, you can go in there and not spend money, but as soon as you walk out that door, give me that motherfucking money. Like it's the systems that we've sort of created, whereas drugs now we're seeing the media, the mainstream press freak the fuck out about young people. Oh, ketamine use up 86%. Yeah, type into Google, ketamine therapy, 1,000 quid in this country, boom, lawful.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do think that yeah, a lot of the talk around ketamine is a little bit over the top. Like people comparing it to the opioid crisis, it's just patently ridiculous. Like it's
Hmm.
just not as nearly as dangerous. And
Hmm.
there are like some risks, though, some very serious risks, and the bladder stuff and people getting trouble downstairs is very real. In serious cases where I've seen people at parties like doing lines literally like the size of like a the width of like a dinner plate,
Yeah.
right? So it can be really bad, but you can't compare it to the sort of hard drugs. And the whole narrative around like Matthew Perry's death, that he
Hmm.
died from a ketamine overdose. I mean, clearly he didn't,
Hmm.
right? Like he was in a hot tub,
He drowned.
and actually the desired effect is to K-hole from one of those like ketamine infusions. So
Hmm.
probably I would guess, unless he was suicidal, it's possible because he was in a bad way and he'd been taking a lot of ketamine. But my theory is that he took an infusion dose to K-hole and just drowned. But and some of the reporting has acknowledged that, but then other people are just saying it's a ketamine overdose. I mean, toxicologically, it just it I, I don't actually know of a fatal ketamine overdose.
Again, and this is where we fall back to the fragility of language, because, like, technically, guns don't kill. If I shoot you and a bullet pierces through you, the bullet doesn't kill you. You die of cardiac arrest. Like, do you know what I mean? So it could one person can take this event and frame it
Yeah,
that
it's tricky. It's tricky.
and another, and it's I think the
Like with all the
reason.
COVID deaths as well, you died after getting COVID, whereas a lot
Yeah.
of the causation, like a lot of the cases, the people only got COVID in hospital after they'd been admitted with
Hmm.
some kind of different thing, but then suddenly it got added to the COVID death toll.
Yeah, it's the malleability and the ability of predominantly authoritative or corporate institutions to manufacture our consent through manipulating statistics and figures. The Simpsons came up to my brain there of when Homer's on the news and he's talking to Kent Brockman and he's like, "Oh, anybody can prove anything with statistics, Kent. 80% of people know that," and he just makes up a random number that isn't a number. But yeah, it's the
I mean,
click.
certainly though, certainly, I don't yeah, I don't think that these things are just completely invented, right?
Oh,
Like
of course not. No, but
not at all, not at all,
overemphasized. Yeah,
just to clarify that,
yeah, yeah.
like
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But certainly when like a narrative takes hold, then it seems that there are like, certain, I guess, natural forces, really. It's just a narrative develops. And then, for various reasons, then that attracts, attention and then like a kind of cottage industry around like funding, like funding organizations like, oh, okay, like we're doing this now. And then it just all kind of snowballs in one direction.
Yeah, I think that's again to speak of the legalizationist playbook. That's exactly what I'm writing of part of the medicalization of currently illicit substances, and I think that's why there's the ketamine freakout. Is they've learned from cannabis. They went shit. We leant too hard on medical, and now every idiot that's smoking a joint says it is medical. And bro, we need to know, not that it's true, but in their head, we need their street drugs to be dangerous poisons that will kill everybody, but ours to be the safest thing. So how do we create these binaries? Like, how do we create these narratives of then going? And the skunk narrative was manufactured for that. It was literally created in tandem with the GW's evolution of it getting its license, the production of Sativex, the research development into Epidiolex, etc. Coincides with, and again, I'll repeat, heard from numerous sources, I'm not going to say who it is. A prominent individual that ran a few different campaign and organizations was paid for by GW allegedly to write in the Sunday Telegraph cannabis scare stories, basically.
Oh, wow.
And this narrative then emerged over time that again that cannabis that's unregulated is skunk. Skunk is dangerous psychotic inducing substance.
Hmm.
And then obviously medical cannabis came along, and medical cannabis is this magic thing. But if you grow that seed at home, that's skunk and it's dangerous and it's poison. Especially if you listen to Curaleaf and that right now. And so again, I think they're coercing us. They're trying to manufacture the normies' understanding of what drugs are. I go, yes, you're right, they can be beneficial, but only when you people do these magic things with it. But these idiots just trying to make money and pay for their kids' food, criminalize them. And yeah, I get it. Some people are Rolex and all the rest and gangster. That's a consequence of prohibition, not of the substances. Like we said, if we had cottage industries that were truly cottage of the people that cared of those substances, if somebody like the Shulgins, as you've written about, were allowed to just open up a research thing and people could like get a subscription through Patreon if it was modern day and they could get postal orders and give feedback and whatever, like there should be shit like that. I don't want to see DMT sold in corner pharmacies. I don't want to see. Do you know what I mean? These things should be accessible, but they should be accessible in the right sort of places. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't
Hmm.
buy Viagra at a kid's playground. Do you
Yeah,
know what I'm
yeah. I
saying?
mean,
But
I think a
Viagra's
lot of these,
accessible.
I do think a lot of these kind of, narratives do emerge organically. Although you're mentioning that people associated with this company went out and did scare stories. I mean, I certainly know with Johnson and Johnson, who were doing the esketamine Spravato stuff. They're people, they're like scientists connected to them are going around and sort of saying that the at-home ketamine isn't really safe.
Mhm.
And right, like in this sort of paradigm, let's say, who's funding the research to say that, recreational cannabis is safe or that recreational ketamine is safe? I mean, you possibly there's actually legal constraints to doing that as well, right? So yeah, then the narrative just kind of gets shoehorned into this kind of space.
Yeah, exactly that. Then it's what can be said within the space rather than people then going, oh, this thing and wanting to champion it. This will lead us into a bit of a conversation about sort of the integrity of journalism, etc. Um, then they go, oh, well, I've seen this thing, but in order for me to get published and in order for me to continue to get published, I've got to make this look like this, or I've got to lessen the angle of this and make it look a bit more like this. And over time, it's like selecting genetics in plants. Then eventually, the thing that comes 20 iterations down the line looks nothing like what originally started. And so we've sort of seen
Mm,
this with the let's call it the gentrification of journalism. And in 2022, I think it was reported by the National Council for Training of Journalists that 80%, I think that's what, four-fifths of journalists operating in the UK came from what they titled top social classes. And if we're then talking about sort of the manufacturing of narratives around like who funds these things, who creates this narrative to create the cottage industry to prescribe ketamine or to do DMT trials or uh like yeah, we're seeing this is sort of the gentrifying of the psychedelic space is you need to pay to play. How then? it's just they're representing their class interest. And so it moves away naturally from the consumer. The consumer is no, we're for the investor, we're for the entrepreneur, we're for the founders of industry. And these are then seen as the people that will make the money from rather than stakeholders that should be involved in the conversation. So when the lower classes are in drug stories in the mainstream press in the UK, they are drug dealers, they are bad people that were caught doing something they're wrong for XYZ. But then when you see an upper class individual in the mainstream press in the UK related to drugs, they're an investor breaking new ground. They're, bringing a breakthrough therapy to vulnerable people. They're going to save XYZ. And it just creates over time this understanding that then anybody involved in that space kind of goes, well, of course you can't be allowed in. You're lower class. You're not involved. Do you know what I mean? And it creates this classist paradigm that permeates into drug law reform, in my
Sure.
opinion.
Yeah, I remember this. I remember this story about like shipping into Holland. I can't remember exactly the details, but I think it was like a legitimate company, a legitimate like sort of shipping container shipping company,
Mm.
and there was some sort of English gentleman who was in charge of the permits or something, and I think he went down for it. I'm not sure if he did time, but he was charged over it. But yeah, they sort of turning a blind eye to the cocaine in the bananas in these shipping containers, right? And yeah, you wonder like it's because of his social class that that he's in that position that he can then just sign off or turn a blind eye to the deliveries, and then the working class people that hanging out on the streets and what have you and don't have a plum job to walk into after school, they're then in this unfortunate situation, and then that attracts kind of over policing. So,
Mhm.
we really just need an overhaul of, I mean, what don't we need an overhaul of in the UK, right? But it's like a way of thinking, and yeah, the class system, as you suggest, really does like permeate through in obvious and more subtle ways. I mean, in journalism, really like it's been tough like the last year or so for me, and just sort of hustling to make it happen, and to keep being able to do it. But for people that have support from their family and this, that, and the other, obviously it's easier to sort of keep making ends meet. And as yeah, journalism kind of gets gutted, it's just going to become more and more the kind of preserve of people, with support from their family, because it is, really, really tough.
Mm. Yeah, there isn't the money in it. As you say, like the economics of everything has been messed up since sort of 2008. We then had obviously 14 years of austerity, and now we're moving into austerity 2.0, and with Trump destabilizing global markets and everything just getting a wee bit fucked up at the minute. There is uncertainty in all directions, and I think this is where we need journalism more than ever. Not to be the mouthpiece of the powerful, not to be promoters of hegemony, not to be supporters of the authority just because they are the authoritative voice. We need to challenge these things, but because the mainstream press and everything else has been so monopolized. I mean, you look at companies like Reach PLC, etc., and they have hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands, of like publications, radio stations, this, that, the other, and the standardization of that information has then lost those voices. So people have this want to speak, and the only platform we have now is social media, and everybody's trying to then be a journalist, as it were, in social media. And there is this difference of not everyone can be. Everyone has a voice, and everyone should be able to present. But the kind of the access it was, or the conceptual idea of the press was this thing that we go around and we listen to all your stories and we put it together into the thing, and then these are the things of public interest. These are the things that we think highlight the current events. Whereas now it feels like, which James Bond film was it? Where the guy's like, we make the news now, and it feels like it's everything's constructed through sponsored content and ads affiliations and everything else that
Oh, is it Tomorrow Never Dies? The second or third Pierce Brosnan one?
yeah, I think it is. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's that German guy.
yeah. And yeah, I feel that's where we're at, especially with drugs and everything else, that there is such a connection between sort of drug journalism, as it were. I'm not accusing yourself here. I'm just sort of speaking in the larger sense, and sort of the corporate interest. The stories that are allowed to then go through, the times they'll answer the phone to you or let you in the door is when your story will do in some way good for them. It'll advance their cause. It will advance their narrative. It's not going to cause them a headache of going, no, you can't print that story about how just people at festivals taking ketamine is safe. No, they need to pay us 10 grand for it, man. What you doing? You're undercutting our bottom line there, buddy. Like, that's what I was saying about this manufacturing of the narrative through the press. Is I don't think it's conscious anymore. I think if you are then one of those 80% in that sort of upper class, that then all around you, you see Dave is in logistics and he'd make 1 million from it from the ports. You know, Mike works in medical, he can get access to the Home Office and get his licenses. You know, or John works in did it like you just see opportunity, and you're trained as the good little capitalist to always find that opportunity. Whereas then the majority lower classes, which are the over-policed population of drug users, because again, the upper classes use a lot of fucking drugs. They can really afford to do cocaine. You think you're a bad man player with 3 grams on a weekend. See what these boys play like, you know what I mean? Um, and so it's different worlds. Yeah, one is then, no, you've got 2 grams cocaine in your pocket. Ah, you devil. Yeah, some guy in his private jet, they find got several kilos, and they're like, oh, it must have been one of the flight crew. Give him some money. You did it, didn't you? Yes, I did it. I shouldn't have smuggled that cocaine through. I'm sorry. It's like the whole licenses thing in the UK at the minute of paying people to take points for you. Like this whole
Mm.
whole underground companies that you basically pay and go, oh, I got caught speeding. I don't want the totting. Some guy who's got a full license says I was on your driving your car, and he goes to court and takes the points for you. It's the
I mean, that's
laws. The
part of the
laws
reason
aren't
I
illegal.
did.
It's just sorry. I was just gonna say that if then the
Yeah.
consequence for the breaking of a law is then a fine, then it isn't unlawful for them. It's just an expenditure. It just costs them something. It's a tax.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that I got interested in drug policy originally was this kind of, the liberation aspect to it. Like people going out, I guess, in a sort of civil disobedience, way and, out on the lawn outside the House of Commons drinking their cannabis tea. And then as the drug laws in different parts of the world do kind of get unraveled and reformed, then you know, the power of that really, for people to have the right and to, demonstrate their right to be kind of altering their consciousness and, you know, possibly healing their bodies in the process and being not being shy about it. I think, that's almost even revolutionary, really, if you consider, the decades long war on drugs. And, I think there is a lot to be optimistic about. Like drugs are being legalized, like, across the world. Like we are in a better position, like than ten years ago, and certainly in a better position than 20 years ago. So I think things are moving in the right direction. And I think it's important not to, get too bogged down in, what are the kind of negative stories, of today in terms of, drug law reform. Because, things are really certainly moving in the right direction. It's just the pace of change, the nature of change, and, ensuring that it's going to lead to kind of equitable outcomes, let's say. And, as you're saying, right, that there isn't just then a legal corporate industry that develops, and the people that were always at the arse end of it are still at the arse end of it.
Yeah, it's my whole issue with legalization as a concept is that, like I said, it's not legalization. It's a closed avenue of discourse that they've created and they've pushed us into because it's not about legal or illegal. Drugs are not illegal or legal. Drugs are unlawful to possess without license, authorization, or exemption. You're then charged when you look at the criminal offenses. It's not possession of an illegal drug. It's unlawful possession of XYZ, same as a knife. You have a knife in your kitchen, you're cutting up your herbs. Oh, well and good. Nobody gives a flying fuck. You took it in your waistband and you walk outside. That's unlawful possession of a knife. The knife is not criminal. It's not suddenly outside is the bad knife and inside is the good knife. Your actions with the knife. So it's about changing the way that the law relates. So you're charged as cannabis related offences. So I'm seeking the decriminalisation of cannabis related offences and the descheduling of cannabis from drug related offence, laws and statutes. I'd argue that that's the way I'd like all drugs treated. And then it basically comes down to you being a dick. Or he's got 2 grams of cocaine in his pocket and he's stood in the marketplace shouting and screaming. Let's do him for the shouting and screaming and being a dick. It's incidental that he's got cocaine in his pocket. Do you know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that's the reality I want to get towards. But we're so just like we've now found this thing. I can then imprint onto you all of these things I think that you are and force you through it, as we were talking about with, oh, you need access, you're using this and you're abusing it. Like in the NHS, there's still at this point, even nearly 7 years into the changes of the law around cannabis, they have a drop-down box system for your what do you call the summary of care notes. It's the front page. You'll maybe see it over your doctor's shoulder, your GP, when you see the screen. On that, they have little codes that code down each investigation for any condition that you can think of. There is only drug abuse coded into that system. They cannot put a code in that says drug use. All
Mm.
use equals abuse under the current laws in the UK. And so it's these kind of issues that then create this paradigm. The UN's on the World Health Organization's on statistics on a meta average say about 90 to 10%. 90% of people will use substances and have no negative consequence. Around 10% could face those consequences. A large proportion of those will then be consequences with the law, will be getting caught up in those systems. And then some small amount is then, like you said, mental health sort of conditions of leading to then physical problems, etc. Those are then the core people that we should be working on to support. And I've always maintained that the best way to support those people is regulate and sell the drugs to the 90% of people, use the profits from that to help with the small percentage of people. We've been doing this with alcohol, drink away. We've been doing this with gamble. When the fun stops, stop. You know what I mean? We can eat it's we have to give humans the ability to
Mm.
fuck up. You're not allowed to infantilize humans and to go, oh no, you can't, you can do this. Yo, you can go to the pub and drink yourself to death that night. That's fine. But if you dare add another substance and take it in that social setting with your friends, like, do you know what I mean? It's such a mental thing. And like I said, with the loss of third spaces, my youth was wonderful. I was reminiscing with Dr. Callie Seaman on the podcast the other week about the second wave of rave culture and buying 5 for a tenner pills, chalky little ecstasy pills that fall apart in the bag, and just a tenner. And that's your night, a tenner. And free water in the venues, free access to the venue, and music's on, and everyone knows that you're off your tits, and nobody cares. And everybody's happy to see you there. And there was this space and this environment. Now to get that, 500 quid for your ticket to the festival, 400 quid in
Yeah.
supplies. You're then going to go buy the drug. You don't even know if it's the drug. Like, you know what I mean? You're then going to go get a tester. You're then going to go do X, Y. Like, it must be so hard to be a young person now with drugs. And it just shows the progression of how worse it's got. It's not to do with the drugs per se, it's to do with prohibition. When we bought ecstasy, ecstasy was ecstasy. We used to get speed and paste, literally straight manufactured, just boof, like, what? Like that is just pure fat. Like you know what I mean? It was you got bought the drug, you got the drug. Now because they've taken away, ironically, the integrity, the morality of people that sold those quality drugs. Think of someone like Ross Ulbricht in Silk Road and their self-correcting system of self-reporting and testing, etc. We've lost those mechanisms in society. And then because then drugs are then this major bad thing and this over there thing, when people go to a festival or whatever and take whatever drug, they almost want to turn that part of their brain off to protect themselves from the fear of all of the consequences to truly enjoy the drug. That's that unconscious
Mm.
drug use we were talking about. The only way to incentivize conscious drug use is to have self-regulated, properly safely regulated markets and products, is to then have that standardized education, harm reduction information, but also benefit maximization. One of the main things that's missing from this conversation is going, in order, if you could take 120 milligrams of MDMA, do things like hot cold tap and alternate hands, things like little things, sensory things that you can do. Or you get too hot, right? You can leak from here, from here, from here, take that to cool down. Little things that will then teach you how to regulate your experience so that you can take a lesser amount of that substance, maximize the experience over time, and get that increase the potential of the positive outcome of that experience.
Well, I look forward to attending the launch of the Simpa podcast, ex free ecstasy free parties.
Well, you say this. We're obviously doing our usual Durham City Cannabis Club events, and we've been adding sound systems this year. So we had Common
Oh,
Unity
cool.
came and brought their full rig for our last one. We had a good like 400 people attend. Big sort of show for the first
Epic.
event. got a 420 event coming up in a couple of weeks. We've got Sriracha from T's Dub Club coming and bringing their system up. And each event for the next, we do a monthly event until the end of the summer. Each event, we're going to bring a different local rig. I am obviously speaking now with the council, and I am trying to figure out how we bring all the rigs together because everybody wants to do what we're going to call like a what the hell was the word I used? Complementary sounds. So basically, we're going to
Hmm.
set up the rigs in different spaces around the garden, and then each rig has a bit of time and they play and build like with a tempo, with a style, and then they throw it over to another one. And rather than it
Oh,
being
cool.
like champion sound and this battle,
Yeah.
it's about sharing the sound and moving around.
Amazing.
And so with doing that, we're having
That
to
sounds
look at
great.
drug policies and whatnot. So free parties, I think they are already coming back. We've seen two sound systems. One that hasn't been around for 10 years has just relaunched to do free parties in the north. There was just the Northeast Crew gathering, which I think was four or five underground sound systems, and they were there with their nitrous balloons and all their kit and all that. The scene is still alive, and I think what we need is this new summer of love. The free party scene was the thing that saved
Hmm.
my generation and a lot of the Gen Xers I know was they were able to then go into these spaces and meet others and reconnect and have a childlike wonder about the world again and have these connective experiences
For sure.
that are priced out of their
Yeah, we
range.
need we need more of that. We need more of that. Just give me 2 secs. I'm just gonna use the bathroom, mate.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, dude.
Wait, just pause it out. Um, yeah, so saying like sort of free parties and that those connective experiences, it's one of the reasons we're having such support or tacit support from sort of local authorities in Durham, is because of the community aspect of it, is bringing people together and like sanding off the rough edges. You know what I mean? Showing that we can gather together, celebrate, have loud music, party together, and cause no damage. You know, lit to pick after ourselves and go way back to our normal lives. Because I think that's where titration exists within drug populations. Think of your pub back in the day. You're like 8 pints deep while you go to the bar, and Mike Gans, nah, I'm cutting you off, mate. You know, some other one of the other guys goes, oh, well, we'll get you into a taxi. Go take you to a taxi. Oh, I want food. You go get some greasy food on the way, and boom, you're in the taxi. And before you know it, you're asleep on the couch. You wake up the next morning, you're fine. We need that kind of infrastructure with other drug use. And the only way that we can currently do that, if the society isn't going to provide it, is we do it for each other. And these are the spaces we do it. So we need to stop criminalizing them because then that invites criminality. We need to recognize that there are a marginalized community that engage in a behavior that could be potentially dangerous and, if needed, offer them potential ways to reduce those potential harms. And I think that's as much as government's responsibility should be in this space.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree that there has to be a kind of, decriminalization has to come, hand in hand with legalization to allow folks to, to do the things that you're saying. And, we're going to have to make it a lot better though, the sort of harm reduction side than what's existing, for gambling and alcohol, because, really it's just completely unfit for purpose. So,
Mm.
is there, I think that, there would have to be some degree of state monopoly because then you ensure that, the state gets the coffers. But then it's like, how do you then make sure that the state reinvests X percent of the profits into these schemes? So, then you kind of get into the conversation around like, okay, so how do we democratize society further and maybe have a kind of Swiss system where there's, more kind of referendums on individual, different things. I remember at university in Montreal, there was like a kind of system where, you would vote and like with X amount of credits. If you took like 30 credits, then you could kind of have a 30 credits vote in the election. So you could kind of vote for 10 different things that you would want your tuition fee money to go towards. So like, okay, yeah, I'll do the student newspaper. I'll put 3 credits towards the free vegan cafe. I'll do free credits to this feminist project, this and that. And that sounds pretty good. Like, give power to the people, I say, and we'll solve a lot of the issues that we have.
Yeah, if I had better faith in big tech, it's something that I guess me as a child was thinking that would be obvious and easy. When the technology's there, yeah, it's literally there's a button. Like in my head as a kid, it was going to be on the house somewhere, and you had a house button, and basically like a screen would be there. And today's thing, oh, we're going to decide on X, Y, Z. Everyone's got the day to vote. You press your vote. It correlates the votes. Action is accorded to vote. Like the reason we have representative democracy was the point of, oh, the people couldn't get together to cast their vote, so we elect a person. They go to a building and represent our needs. Long since have they not represented our fucking needs, but we have now the technology to be able to, as you say, to have those mini referendums, to have those things. But we saw through Brexit, we can't have a rational conversation in this fucking country because the media is captured, and that's what I'm saying. Is I see happening with drugs, is there is a suppression of the other side of a conversation, the manufacturing of the opposite side of the conversation, and then there's the side they're tacitly or outright wanting to support, which in this one is the like I said, because it's a good way of phrasing it actually. So legalization is effectively like the decriminalizing of corporate selling of drugs, but without then the decriminalization of the individuals. All you're doing is creating monopolies and racketeering schemes and the guaranteeing the continuation of a grey market. Look at California. Still, two-thirds of all sales in California are not regulated, and the system is falling on its arse. The government state-backed monopolies is something that does worry me. Switzerland have obviously just announced that they're moving towards doing that based off what Canada did for the first several years. In fact, still is. I think 8 out of the 10 provinces in Canada, 8 of them are still wholly state monopolies. So that provenance buys all of the cannabis from all the producers that it gives the licenses to, then it sells to all the dispensaries that it gives the licenses to. So guess what? If you piss off the government, you don't get to grow weed in that area. You don't get to sell weed in that area. Do you know what I mean? And so it's a continuation of the arbitrary restrictions of individuals the system and the establishment doesn't like. And so if we can decriminalize to a rational point, not, oh, 2 tabs of acid and 4.6 grams of this, or like, no, let's rationally decriminalize this shit. Prove intention to sale. Don't be like, it's past an arbitrary number. Now we believe you were going to supply that. No, find the scales, find the bags, find the messages. If they aren't there, doesn't matter that I've got a kilo of blow. I'm working through that shit. It cost me, and I'm not saying this Google, anybody, YouTube, I'm not saying this real, but you know what I mean? It's the cheap. It would be a lot cheaper to buy that if you really like the cocaine, and you could. It's a lot cheaper for you to buy that block and sit on it for 5 years or whatever, and just work your way through it, and the less exposure as well. You know what I mean? Instead of going to a dealer 1,000 times over the next 4 years, it's sat there and it's out the
Yeah,
way. It's economics of
yeah,
anything else. Like you wouldn't kick off at somebody that like homebrew. You can homebrew as much alcohol as you want in the world. You can just fill the whole thing. But as soon as you then got to sell it or to supply it, that's where then the regulation of government comes in. And again, that's all I want. So I should be able to, if I can smoke it, and I can smoke cannabis, fill this flat with like 200 plants. Like that should not be a problem to anybody as long as I'm paying my electric, I'm not stealing anything. Then where is the problem? The problem could then be
hmm,
perceivably if I start selling that and making thousands upon thousands, that's a tax problem. It's got nothing to do with the drug. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's all of the other proliferal criminality that arises from a lack of regulated, not just commercial but individual access. We see this in various states as well that
hmm.
have corporate access. But me and you both grow plants in Colorado, in Pueblo. I can't sell you my weed. You can't sell me your weed. Patients in this country can both buy prescriptions, but they can't try each other's weed.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
if you look at how the drug laws did originally, get put in place, right? It was to police kind of people of color and more kind of working communities. So we're still kind of dealing with the legacy of that today, for sure.
oh, 100%, 100%. And it's such a hard thing because this is an intergenerational conversation. It just happens it's manifested now within drug war and law reform and legalization, all these different sort of elements. That's just where the class war is manifest because it's an opportunity for a decentralization of a resource. Like nothing else. You can't grow wheat in your bedroom. You can't grow steel. You can't grow cars, or you can't participate in any other industry from your bedroom. Wait, digital creation, content creation, all that kind of arbitrary things like creation, like arts, etc. Yeah, through the arts and etc. But in order to then make a commodity and then sell that out and then be able to keep the profits from that, there's other than like vegetables and whatever else, but the margins on cannabis. So it could really be a class revolution if you went, okay, instead of building this 25 million pound greenhouse or whatever, what we're going to do instead is allow everybody to produce a little bit. We'll test it before it goes in the market, grade it in classes like we do onions. So we have farmers all over the place can sell onions. It gets graded a classification. It can then be sold at XYZ in the market. That's what, again, I want to see. That
Hmm.
helps so much. Then that truly gets rid of your so-called black market. If everyone that needs to participate in that system and make money from it can lawfully do so, then
Hmm.
that's what the end of the war looks like to me anyway.
Yeah, I think so long as we just move towards a system, a society that allows people to do what they like to do, then we're heading in the right direction. I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but you know, in various arenas, when we're preventing people, through various means, direct and subtle, from, doing what they want to do, it just disincentivizes people. It makes people sad and depressed. And allowing people to just flourish and spread their wings is just going to be better for everyone, better, productivity, better, for the economy. You can tax it more, not even necessarily talking about drugs or cannabis production, but a whole range of other things that are just, pushed into the shadows, through, outdated ideas effectively, and having a system that was established, several hundred years ago that, still operates in some of the same ways.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, it's the collision of sort of tradition, historic prejudice, and market influences trying to, get on board. They maybe missed the dot-com bubble, they maybe missed the housing bubble, they maybe missed the AI, whatever, and they're looking at cannabis and going, nah, like I'm getting in on this. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
it is such a complex thing. I guess that's why I've got hundreds of episodes of this and gonna have hundreds more because we just gotta keep talking it
Yeah.
out. Um,
Well, keep going with the sound system, mate. I think just all about, bringing people together, and obviously drugs help, to bring people together, and then once you're together to kind of reduce your inhibitions and just connect with each other even more. So I think, yeah, the more communities get together and, you know, dance and, yeah, responsibly, consume substances that aren't alcohol, in fact. I think, it can be good, but it's ultimately, kind of toxic, right? So,
Mm. Yeah, it's just it's tolerated, but it's yeah, when we think of the comorbidity of cancers, it's relation to domestic violence, public violence, etc., individual self-destruction. And we could go on for forever. But yeah, I agree. I'd quite like to, at some point, maybe later in this week, pitch you covering our hemp garden project, because that's exactly part of what we're doing there is creating a public space where there's effectively an amnesty to come and consume cannabis in a safe environment where then we put on these events. And it's about, literally the tagline for hemp gardens is cultivating community connections. We're trying to create a multifunctional, intergenerational space for people to just meet each other and just participate in a potential new model. It's a glimpse of the future, as I call it,
mhm.
anyway. But
Cool.
yeah,
That
I'd
sounds
let
great, mate.
sweet.
Yeah, drop me a line about it for sure.
Excellent, excellent. I'm aware of the time. I'll ask you my last cliched question before I let you go. Um, what are we not talking about that we really should be talking about at the minute?
Regarding drugs.
Anything, just anything. What do you think is something that's pressing that isn't in the discourse right now, isn't in the zeitgeist?
Yikes. That's a big question, bud. What's not being talked about? I mean, I'm really interested in psychedelic policy at the moment, and I do think that the conversation has gone a bit too far, in favor of legalization and normalization, which I think is fine. But I think that, we do need to be, very mindful of the very powerful effects of psychedelics, and, to a lesser extent, cannabis. I think, when people are, taking mushrooms or even, smoking weed, without like the right intention, and, it's a psychedelic experience, and these drugs can, give us messages, and when we don't heed, those messages, and we keep on consuming whatever it might be, I think that, there can be, negative outcomes, right? Like people can, get a little bit lost, and maybe that's just a reflection of what's happening more widely in their life, which is, partly why they're maybe lacking a degree of kind of um listen, like unable to kind of listen to the messages, right? So, I'm fully in favor of, you know, decrim, legalization, regulation, the whole lot, and pretty much all of it,
Mhm.
because it's the laws that, ultimately create a lot of the harms we're seeing. But yeah, I think, we've had this with cannabis in America as well. When big business, gets a hold of it, then it just goes completely the other way in terms of, the narrative. And yeah, I think that, people that do end up just taking mushrooms every day, or smoking weed every day, there has to be a, some balance and some like understanding that, you know, there is, other things, that is important to kind of direct your energy towards, like personal work. Otherwise, people do end up, in a slightly worse situation than they started off in.
Yeah, I think what you're sort of speaking of there is integration. There is no
Yeah,
emphasis
exactly.
under a
Yeah.
a legalization system for integration because it's the lie of capitalism. If one of these makes you this happy, two of them will make you twice as happy, and 10 of
Yeah.
them will have you in ecstasy. It's
And
yeah,
this is why none of the dispensaries are selling like Thai, right?
mm.
It's all just the strong stuff.
Yeah, what's the biggest number? I want that. And that's a hangover, I think, of prohibition, of then you want to take one thing and it do the thing. You don't want to have to then maintain and explore. And it's a lot of people don't have that relationship with these substances. They want to have air quotes the bravery of take the thing and then ride out the thing. Do you know what I mean? And that's that unconscious
Hmm.
drug use, as we said. So I think, yeah, it's there's a quote from Buddhist scripture. What is it that lessons mistakes will be repeated until lessons are learned. And I think that's where you can end up with people having problematic. Maybe that's I'm not saying all bad trips, but some bad experiences are
Hmm.
you've gone, oh, I'm asking this thing for help, and the plant's like, I've told you this 16 fucking times now. You're not listening. How about having this? Do you know what I mean? That there isn't, like you said, a spirit and an energy and an intention. And if we don't respect that and respect ourselves and cultivate and earn a relationship with these substances, we're gonna fuck ourselves up
Absolutely, yeah,
individualistically and societally. Um, this has been a
for
ple
sure.
this is
Yeah,
this has been an absolute pleasure. I would love to get you back on again. Maybe later in the summer after this inquest in Coventry for Sean Fitzgerald is done. Um, and
sure.
we could discuss more sort of different aspects. But I think yeah, I've very enjoyed this. Thank you for taking the time. And
Pleasure.
yeah,
Thanks very much for having me.
where can people follow you, keep up with you?
Thanks, Simpa. I guess on Instagram at Matha Mundo, MatthaMundo, is probably the best place, and then they can get on my website from there.
Excellent, excellent. All right, I'll let you get off and enjoy your day. I'll do a bit of housekeeping,
Lovely.
and yeah, pleasure. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, mate.
All right,
Nice one. Take
peace and
care.
love.
Bye bye.
Bye. Well, there you go, folks. That was Mattha Busby. I feel so embarrassed that I couldn't get his name right. Matha. I couldn't get his name right at the start there. Um, yeah, bless. It's always fun to have humbling experiences with new people. I I adored that conversation. I think there's several points I wanted to lean heavier into. I was quite mindful of sort of time restrictions, especially towards the end there. Um, yeah, with him agreeing to sort of come back on, I think we can explore in a bit more depth some of these topics in conversations. Yeah, I enjoyed that, and I hope you did too. Hope you learned something new. I'm just going to wrap straight up here because I think there's a lot to process in that episode. And yeah, if you like this, please do give us a like, a share, a thumbs up, a heart, whatever it is you do to show appreciation on whatever it is platform you enjoy this you enjoy this podcast on. I appreciate it and appreciate you. If you really liked it, please check us out on patreon.com/the Simpa Life, where for less than a cup of coffee a week, you can help me keep the lights on this little project of mine. Yeah, check out simpalife.com for articles, other content, etc. Yeah, we'll be back next week with, I don't know, somebody. It'll be awesome. You'll love it. I'll love it. All right, be good to each other. Take it easy. Peace and love.